Thank you for joining us again on Fans First. I have a pleasure to join with a guest today from VonFinch Capital. It is the founder and CEO, Stephen Pesavento. Nice having you on the show, Steve.
Hey, it's great to be on, Chad.
It's always good talking to kind of the different niches that I get to speak with. My background is more in online communities, health and wellness, fitness, these types of things. So when I'm talking to someone who's doing real estate or kind of building communities and other niches, I'm always super curious to dive in on how they think about building supporters behind their brands.
Yeah, I think it's such an important space. I mean, community is what really, I think, drives businesses to the next level. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, so why don't we just kind of start off with giving kind of people a quick understanding of what Von Pitch Capital does? I know I was telling you I was checking out the website. It looks like you guys have a pretty powerful movement over there. So just kind of give us an explanation of overview of what you guys do.
Yeah, so VonFinch is a real estate investment platform. We focus on bringing in a community of different individual investors, and together we invest into multiple different multifamily buildings around Denver and the Midwest. So I've been doing this for nearly a decade, bought over 220 different properties, bought over $200 million worth of real estate, and it's been a lot of fun to do it. But one of the key drivers of our business is we know how to go out and find, operate, and then manage individual multifamily buildings. And so we're really good at the real estate side. We know how to find deals. We know how to fund them. We know how to manage them. And we started out initially, raising private capital from individuals that would loan us money, and then we'd go and buy houses. And we started out fixing and flipping houses. And then eventually the business kind of grew into a place where after doing 200 individual single family homes, it made sense for us to transition and shift into the multifamily from a scalability standpoint. And with the podcast, the Investor Mindset Show, and millions of downloads and thousands and tens of thousands of listeners, it really kind of gave us a platform to invite those people to participate in the equity side of that transaction and be able to participate in the profit. And so that really opened up kind of a whole nother channel for us, 4 or 5 years ago. And the business has been growing ever since.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting space. I mean, there's so much real estate out there. How did you decide to just end up in the Denver area? Is that where you're from? Is that where you kind of originally grew up?
Well, so I started investing. I grew up in Minneapolis. I worked in management consulting. I moved out to Colorado to work in the tech industry. And then I transitioned out of the tech industry after doing some startups and working in startups and my own startups into real estate because it was something that I was always interested in, but I had this feeling like I couldn't do it. I didn't grow up in a family that had money, or I didn't grow up around people who had real estate, but I always had that dream or that vision of owning properties and benefiting from cash flow. And at the time I started, I didn't have any of my own money, but I was living in California at the time. And I went and found some really great mentors, people who are already doing it. I found a way to get in their life and add value to them. And within that first year, I bought and flipped over 75 houses in 2 different states that I didn't live in. I set up shop. I had different people who were operating on the ground locally, and I would go and visit. And over time, things grew. And the reason we focus on Denver is because Denver is a really phenomenal market for growing capital. It's a great place for appreciation. It's not as great for cash flow. So we don't hold on to properties for 5 or 10 years in Denver. We really focus on buying things that are undervalued, renovating them and turning them into better operating buildings and businesses, and then selling them to someone who wants to sit on that. And then we'll move the money out to the Midwest or the Southeast where there's good cash flow for long-term holds. So Denver's, it's in my backyard. I have an opportunity to have really good connections and relationships to get phenomenal deals. And because of that is really one of the key reasons we focus on this market, is because it's a good place to put money in and be able to double our money very quickly, and then be able to move that money out to other states that are better for long-term income.
Yeah, no, I mean, you seem like a pretty ambitious guy. I think one of the things I've noticed when I talk to a lot of people who are kind of trying to fix and flip homes is it becomes difficult when you get, even just one or two projects. How are you able to scale so fast to 75 projects? What was the kind of key to your success of not just kind of starting getting bogged down with your first few projects?
I think the key to being able to grow so quickly and be able to make such a dramatic move into the space and be a real player was the same thing I recommend to other people who are looking to get into real estate, whether that's active or whether they're looking to invest in a fund or an individual deal that might be managed by a firm like VonFinch. And it really comes down to partnering with experts. So when I started, I had skills and expertise and experience in another industry, but I also had a vision and a plan. So I went and found through networking, through connections, I found someone who had been flipping houses for nearly 20 years. He had built hundreds, if not thousands, of different houses before the 2008 collapse. And he was at a point in his career where he was excited about scale, but he didn't necessarily want to do it on his own. And so I was able to, one, lay out the vision and plan, and then two, be able to execute and bring the right people together. And he was excited to bring his experience to the table. And that allowed me to then pitch to the people we were buying properties from or the lenders who were going to lend on those properties that, hey, there's, a heavy amount of experience at the table here. This is what we're doing. And I actually pretended that I wasn't playing the role that I was playing. I pretended that I was a much lower level employee because I felt like at the time in my early 20s that, being so young wasn't credible. So I didn't act like I was the founder. I acted like I worked for the company. And that worked as we kind of got started and grew the business. And then eventually, as I moved into the multifamily space, I took a similar approach. I went and found people who had heavy experience in construction property management, and I made sure that they were tied in with alignment to the deal. We would either hire them or we'd partner with them, and they would bring their expertise to the table and they would participate in the profit that would come out of it. And it allowed us to be able to scale really quickly, buying 20 buildings, 200 to 300 unit type assets, across the country. And I think at the core of it, it's finding people who are good at things that you're not, who have experience that you don't, and finding a way to add value to them so that they're interested in doing something together.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a very interesting perspective that you have. I tell people, even just the fact that you have the self awareness to be able to identify what types of teammates you need in order to succeed. I think that's a skill a lot of people struggle with. Where do you think, or where do you attribute you kind of getting that mindset from, that you even have the ability to know, okay, I can do this, but I need to put a team together for these larger pieces or for pieces that, maybe you don't have the expertise?
I mean, it kind of started from a place where I didn't grow up with money. I didn't grow up in that type of family, but I was obsessed with figuring out, well, how do I go and create the kind of life that I want to create? How do I have the right thoughts and beliefs? How do I think like an investor, a business person, et cetera? And so I started surrounding myself with other people who were very successful. And they were interested in helping me succeed or sharing their lessons because they saw that I was actually going to take that advice and I was going to put it into practice and I was going to do it very quickly. And so that's exciting for other people. And so I really listened to people who had been down the path before me and recognize that you can't do everything on your own and you really do need to build a team. And I think that's the key thing is everyone can add value at some different part of the process. The construction manager knows how to do construction. And if I can get him bought in to not take profit on doing the work up front and instead take his profit on the back end, he's going to make more. And I'm going to know that we are in alignment because he's not going to make a profit if he doesn't do his job well. And so we've been able to take that partnership mentality throughout kind of the whole organization. So everyone on our internal team has that, where they're participating in the success of the company, as well as all the individual people, all the way down to superintendents or people who are more entry level on the property management side. They understand that every time we save $1 at the property, that it's worth $5 on the back end in profit. And they know that that's going to be really important to them. And that's the key, is that all the way down to the investor, the person who's writing the check, they may not have experience in real estate. They may have experience, but they don't necessarily want to put in the time, effort, energy, or have the relationships necessary to be able to operate at a high level. but by putting their money in, they're going to get, somewhere between 60 and 80% or more of the profit on the deal. So everybody is aligned from start to finish, and it really does lead to, a really good, operating organization where we know that we're not going to pick deals that don't work, because we don't want to work on something for 4 or 5 years to make no profit. And so our investors know that, and they feel more comfortable making investments, in the 50, 100,000 or even multi-million-dollar range on an individual project.
And so when you're trying to, I mean, all this sounds super interesting. When you're trying to think about building this out from scratch and getting, a community of people to support these ideas, where are the venues that you're getting the word out there? Are you using social media? Are you, I know you mentioned the podcast and things like that, but how do you even start when you have nothing, or you've never really raised this amount of money before, for example?
Well, I think the first thing was understanding, okay, well, who do I need to learn from, and who do I need to be connected to, and how can I bring value to those people? So I went and found other existing communities that had people who were doing what I wanted to do, and I wanted to be able to get around them and figure it out. So, moving from flipping 200 houses in 2.5 years into buying a 200 unit multifamily project, there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences. So I needed to then meet people who had been through both and understand what are the differences, and then meet people and understand what is it that I am going to need to do, or how are we going to need to level up in order to move into this space. And then when it comes to attracting the right partners and investors to participate in these projects, it's really come down to, the network is your net worth, right? So the podcast has been a really powerful tool, because you have thousands of people who are listening to an episode. They get an opportunity to get to know me at a deep level. And I'm fairly personal in those interviews. It's the authentic me that's showing up and having conversations with people. And I'm learning myself in those conversations, talking to other successful people. And so they get to kind of sit and look over the shoulder. And that leads to building a relationship. The other avenues is, we speak at a lot of events. So I have an opportunity to get in front of different groups of people and be able to share, experience and mindset, and how to think like an investor. That then attracts people in. But at this point in time, we've been able to bring a lot of people in because of referrals. So yes, we do social media, and yes, there's different content and stuff out there to kind of be able to give that credibility and speak one to many. But one of the best tools we've had is that other investors are referring their friends, their family. Once they have success and they see that, oh, well, I've taken this risk, I've made this investment, I'm seeing a return. They're communicating very efficiently and effectively throughout the process, where I feel good about things, even when there's challenges, because in any business, there's going to be a challenge, and every apartment building is an individual business. So when we're able to communicate how we're solving those, people then build trust. And that's led to, a community with hundreds of individuals who are investing in the different projects and funds that we do. And it's been a lot of fun. I think the community aspect of it and knowing the impact that's coming from it is really, really powerful. But then being able to do it with other people and know that they're bought in to, the direction that we're going. And, making money is obviously, we're in the business of doing just that. But it's about more than that. It's about what the money can do and how it can change someone's path, and create a lifestyle for them that they might not be able to create if they didn't have the tool or the vehicle to be able to do it.
Got it. Yeah, no, it's very familiar with me when you talk about some of the kind of techniques you use, especially using other communities. One of the things I tell people all the time that are trying to start communities is there are already communities out there that they might not directly be the exact community that you're looking for, but they have similar interests, or they would be, say, already targeted for you, a nice overlap for whatever you're interested in. So, when I was looking to start Kettlebell Kings and really trying to figure out where do I find people who want to even be involved with this brand, there were already competitions and groups and kettlebell teams and all over the world, all over, small 10, 15 people in this small town in Minnesota and another 15 people in California. And if you bring all those people together, the word of mouth, it grows itself. So I really understand when you're talking about kind of finding those other communities. When you're first starting, how do you identify kind of the ROI on that? I know there's a lot of things where you will be kind of wasting your time at some of these kind of networking opportunities. What are you looking for to help identify the most lucrative or the most helpful to your business?
Yeah, I found that going to events is really powerful, but it does take the most amount of time. It's not as scalable. And so I try to limit the events I go to ones that I'm either speaking at or have, a really good community where it's more of a reunion and I'm just reconnecting with people. But what I found in particular in our business is going to real estate events is a phenomenal way to meet people who are in real estate or want to be active in real estate. There's a lot of people who want to run a business like the business that I run, at least until they understand that it's a lot more effort and work. And then they decide at that point that they, want to take more of a passive path or a partner path where they can put their money to work with someone else. What I found is that, some of our best clients are people who are, doctors or dentists or lawyers or CPAs. They're professionals that are making a lot of money, but they're very busy in what they do, or they're entrepreneurs who are looking to put money to work in a way that gives them another income stream or another way to grow, that they create some diversification. Maybe 100% of their wealth was in their business, and now they've taken 40% of it and put it into a variety of different private investment strategies that now give them an opportunity to grow what they control, but all their eggs aren't in one basket, and that ends up leading to a much more secure feeling, especially when they're able to choose the right people to work with. So finding communities of people like that have been great. And what's phenomenal about the physician community is that a lot of them know one another, and there's a lot of groups where the whole point of the group is to share different opportunities to grow wealth and learn. And so what we've noticed is that we've had a number of different people who've come to us, not through those communities, but then have been excited to be able to introduce us to those groups of people, because one, they're getting value by being the person who's bringing an opportunity, but all the people in the group are getting value because the opportunities we have are kind of a rare find. There might be a lot of different groups who are doing multifamily out in the world today, obviously, because there's a lot of apartment buildings, there's a lot of places that people need to live, and there's a little bit of a housing crisis going on, so there's always a need for what we offer. But we do it a little bit different in the sense that we're really looking for that distressed property, the property that's in pretty rough condition, because we know we've done it so many times that we know we can come in, we can fix up those problems, and there's profit in solving problems. And so we
Yeah.
particularly look for deals that are more value investing focused, kind of like Warren Buffett does in the stock market. We want to find things that are worth more than what we're buying them for. And then once we do our job, once we do what we do best, that they're going to be worth significantly more. And that's how we can make the kind of returns that can lead to people doubling their money in 3 to 5 years very, very comfortably.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned kind of you know there's money in solving the problem and you have the expertise to do it, so it makes it a lot easier for you. My background, most people don't know this, but my one of my favorite jobs probably was I was a project manager for a construction company out of college,
Mm.
and I did distressed buildings. I secured and demoed distressed buildings for the city of Houston. So I used to literally think like, oh, I could easily flip this because I know exactly how to rebuild or demolish, and it's like once you know how all the little pieces work together, you can
Yeah,
put a
because
plan together, make it profitable.
there's like something interesting. We obviously like buying buildings that are beautiful and sexy, and people love investing in those buildings because they're kind of like a trophy.
Yeah,
Ironically, they make less money because they're already fixed up, but we have been able to find quite a few where we don't have to do as much work, but we're still able to get a great deal. But some of the best opportunities that we find are the ones where mom and pop owners, individuals own these properties, or even some sophisticated family offices own these properties, but they just haven't been managed well. They put that management on someone else, on third party, and there's problems. Maybe they have people move in and they decide to stop paying rent, or even worse, in some buildings you'll have people who move in and they're criminals. They're selling drugs or doing something bad. And most people would say, hey, well, that seems really risky. We don't like that. The irony is, after doing it so many times, we know exactly what to do to be able to rehouse the people that need to be rehoused and help them find a new house and pay for a security deposit and support them through that process. And then the people who are just not great people, people who no landlord really wants to have in their property, We also know how to get them out and incentivize them to leave or use the legal system to get them out. And the irony is that by focusing on problem properties, we can create huge profit margins because we're able to build in all of this buffer because that owner has a, they have a specific reason they want to sell. They know it's not operating up to its capacity and they're willing to sell at what it's doing now or a discount because of the problem. And that ends up leading us to being able to, create some, really, really powerful returns.
I mean, and I think ultimately, if you talk about, what is capitalism or entrepreneurship, it's, it is solving problems. So you're almost like you are doing a service to, to our communities by fixing up these properties and actually turning a profit for the investors versus someone who is just looking as kind of a middleman to flip something and not really provide any value. You actually
Yeah.
are looking for areas that you can provide value. And I think there's a lot of, not just honor in that, but I do think that's the genuine spirit of what entrepreneurship is once you bring value to a community, it's almost like people will continue to follow you because you bring them value.
Yeah. And the cool thing is when you walk through one of our properties, is if you see a before and after, it's like, wow. The
Yeah.
fact that people are living in the way that they're living when we buy it. And then we're turning it into a place where I'd be happy to have my mother stay or a family member. It's these buildings aren't necessarily the buildings that you or I are aspiring to live, but they're a place that people do need a place to live. And they need a clean place that's safe and that things are fixed and that it looks nice and it feels good. And ironically, people are willing to pay more for that. And that is good for the investor and it's good for the people who live there too.
Yeah. And at what point did you kind of identify this particular niche? You speak about kind of starting off with doing properties. Were you doing that from the beginning, or at what point did you kind of transition to being a specialist in this space?
Well, when we started, again, growing up in a family without a lot of means, I was very frugal growing up, definitely learned the value of saving money or getting a discount or a deal. So that mentality worked really well coming into this space. And so from day one, I was always focused on buying properties for less than they were worth, being able to provide more value to that seller by making things really easy or simple or not requiring things to be fixed, but then being able to come in and do kind of the magical work we do. And when it came to, moving into the commercial space, buying much larger buildings, ironically, there's still a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of people who have owned a building for 10 or 20 years and they haven't had the extra money to fix it up. They've just spent the cash flow, they lived off of it, and they haven't raised rents. And so just being able to look at something and say, hey, well, this really needs to get renovated. Like we want people to have a better place to live. And then the market actually justifies our ability to make that investment because the rents are so far below what they could be. So we've always been focused on value investing. I'm not a big fan of buying anything for what it's worth or buying it based on the idea that it'll naturally appreciate. We want to have control over the profit that we make. And so we can control that when we're able to buy it right and then do the right renovations and then be able to put the right people in it that all lead to, higher income and therefore higher value.
Got it. And so when I think anytime you're trying to get people involved in your community, there's always kind of a hurdle to overcome with that initial engagement. What's the easiest way for someone to kind of find out more information, not just about you, but if they were to, try to be a fan or become part of your community, what is the steps that they would take to kind of go about that?
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing to talk about because there's different communities that have different barriers to entry.
Yeah.
You can get your foot in the door and start getting to know us. You can go to vonfinch.com. You can check out the website. You can sign up to have a phone call with a member of our team and see if it's kind of the right fit for you. And we'll go through, we'll get to know who you are and you'll answer a bunch of questions about what you're looking to do. And, one of our investor relations persons is a certified financial planner. And so he's actually going to ask questions to kind of understand, hey, is this a fit? Can we help you? And if we can't, we'll send you in the right direction. If we can, then you'll have an opportunity to kind of look behind the curtain and see the opportunities that are there. But that's the thing about the investing space is we have a very solid community of people who are interested in participating, who who are excited about it, but there is a big barrier. Somebody does have to make an investment of $100,000 or more, or sometimes as little as $50,000 investment. But that is a barrier. You have to be able to write that check. You have to be able to say, hey, I believe in this. And so it does take some time for people to get to know us and trust us and understand what we're doing. And so we just understand that going in. Like, our goal is, how can we help you get where you want to go, and ask the right questions and be available to do that. What I find is a lot of people are quite excited about the opportunity, but then their mindset kind of jumps in. They go into the consumer mindset. They think, oh, well, I'm spending this money, I'm not investing it. They think, oh, well, could there be some risk here that I'm not thinking about? All of those things are good things to think about, but they often do prevent people from being able to make the change to step into something that's new to them. Because private equity and private real estate and private credit have been, for 100 years, the place that the richest people have always invested their money. But for people who are making a couple $100,000 a year, or even a couple million, they might not have had access to this stuff until recently. And so it seems like a new thing, even though it's been around as long as people have been investing in just about anything.
And how do you go about convincing people, in comparison to the other investments that are out there? Let's just use the stock market, crypto, if you're trying to be more extreme. But how are you competing with other investment opportunities, and how do you present yourself as an option? Are you just part of a portfolio? Or are you a kind of quicker return? Like, what do what makes you stand apart from other investment opportunities?
Yeah, it definitely depends. We never try to convince people to come in, partly because it's a long-term deal. Even if you're investing and it's only going to be a 2 or 3 year hold, that's 2 or 3 years that we're going to be your partner and you're going to be ours. So we actually spend a lot of time upfront vetting people, understanding who they are. We kind of have a no jerk policy. So we want to understand how people actually show up before, because we want this to be a great experience for everybody. And so we've fired clients in the past because of them not being a cultural fit for us. But at the end of the day, what we do is we get to know them, we understand their situation. Then we start presenting what are the opportunities, how should they actually be vetting these deals. We try to educate them, and in that process, we make it available for them to invest. But we don't really push or encourage somebody unless we feel like that's what they need, because they want to do it, but something's holding them back. So for the most part, it's more of a discussion, a conversation. It's more about sharing information and seeing if somebody is interested in taking that step on their own, versus more of like a hard sales type strategy. If we were selling like a low, a product that was maybe $50 or $100, might be a little bit more of a situation where you'd say, hey, trust us, believe us, this is what it is. We're going to kind of push them in that direction. But because we're actually partnering with them, and for us, we just want them to get started investing the first time, because we know that once they do get started and they have that experience, majority of our investors, over 85% of them, reinvest when they have new capital that comes back, or even before, because they see kind of the results. So we know that once we get them on the train with us, they start seeing how we work and what we do, that we'll have long-term partners. And that's what we're really focused on.
Yeah. And I know if you're like me, I probably watch someone for maybe months, even sometimes years, before I actually engage with someone's movement, or maybe maybe I have to save money aside to put myself in a position to be able to take advantage of someone like yourself. But where's the best place online for them to kind of sign up and find out more about everything you have going on, any newsletters or social media contacts?
Yeah, the best place is VonFinch.com if you want to learn directly about investing. We have the Investor Mindset podcast, which you can find on YouTube and Spotify and every other podcast player out there. So the Investor Mindset Show, it's a great place to learn a lot about how to think like an investor. And then at Steven.Pesavento on all channels. We put out some different content. We have some different behind the scenes recordings and videos, and a lot more educational stuff. But if you want to learn about investing, it's a great place to go. And if you want to get started investing, then you'd go to VonFinch.com.
Okay, so you guys have heard it first. I mean, Stephen, I think I could keep talking all day, about investing, and I definitely will be following you myself to stay abreast of what you're doing, and hopefully at some point you and I could even possibly work together on some properties in Denver. That'd be awesome. I love coming down to Colorado. I ski there pretty much every single year, so it'd be a great opportunity for me to have some investments to check out there as well.
It'd be great. We'd love to have you. We've got a lot of folks that we've met through communities like this that have joined us kind of on our mission. So we really appreciate you having us on, Chad, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us.